Good afternoon. Hello, and welcome to another issue of Volusia County Issues. I'm Eddie Colosimo, also known as Crazy Eddie. With me this morning is former Mayor Roland. Roland, nice to see you, and thanks for coming out this morning.
Thanks for having me.
We've got some issues here in Holly Hill with taxes. Proposal has been made to be more efficient or cut property taxes. Apparently it's stirred up a little bit of a storm. Can you give us, we had, on our last show last week, we had Commissioner Donnie Moore, who brought that up. And he was here and he gave us his opinions, what he thinks should and could be done. And I know that you've looked at it. As the former mayor and someone who's been in the city for how many years did you serve on the commission?
Served for 13 years, 8 as a commissioner, 5 as mayor.
That's great, and thank you for your service all those years. So what would be your take on what is being suggested and how do you feel about it, Roland?
Well, first of all, let's talk about the issue of taxes in Holly Hill, and we're talking specifically about property taxes, which is what he was talking about slashing. I called it cut, he called it drastically reducing. To me, it's like saying that a fee is not a tax, and yet it really is. So it's semantics, and I don't want to get into semantics. The City Commission of Holly Hill, for the past 13 years while I was involved with it, always, in every way, tried to keep taxation as low as possible while providing the services and the programs which the citizens demanded. Every time you have an election, you have people that run on those programs and what they want to do for the city while saying we want to reduce taxes. The current City Commission hired a city manager over a year ago, O.L. Wingo, and they charged her with the unlikely task of trying to figure out how to lower the budget, and unfortunately it included cutting employees, okay, because employees are 72.4% of the budget of the city of Holly Hill, and generally it's between 70 and 75% in any particular municipality or the county. You have not only the salary of the person, you have the benefits, which include insurance, which has been going up and up and up, and you also have benefits. And benefits, as you know, are being looked at. Benefits are part of the pension, and so that's a critical source right now. And I think that reductions can be made through pension negotiations. Now, pension items are normally given whenever you can't give the salary, and Holly Hill for many years was didn't have as much money to give in raises, so they gave things as far as pensions go. And I believe a deal is a deal is a deal, and I'd like to see some of that still remain. But back to property taxes. Property taxes are established each and every year, and in the city of Holly Hill for numerous years, all that we collect is the same money that we collected last year so that we can keep the same programs and the same services into effect. When O.L. Wingo came in, Dr. Wingo slashed and cut many programs, changed things around, and did everything that the commission charged her to do. And then they turned around and there was a new election, and inside of 2 hours they fired her for doing those very things. Because she did, you know, get rid of employees. It's the only other way to put it. It's a cruel way to put it, because employees are like family in a small city, and we really, really hated to see anyone go. But there's only so much money that you have unless you want to raise taxes. Since the new commission's come in, they've done rehiring. They've hired back a lot of old friends. They've hired back a lot of positions. And I really don't know where that money's coming from, because our budget was so tight last year. Now, property taxes, Eddie, are number one, only 18% of the total amount of taxes that's collected by any particular municipality on the average, and that figure holds true in the city of Holly Hill. So you were looking at slashing out of the $23 million budget about $3.5 million. One of the most critical things to be slashed out of property taxes would be the Community Redevelopment Agency tax increment financing, the CRA TIF fund, okay? That would be cut out. And right now that's the lifeblood. It paid for $3 million worth of sidewalks and new water lines here along Ridgewood Avenue, along the streets to the east and west of US 1 and some of the commercial areas. They're going to be doing more water line work, and part of that is going to be CRA funded. And so there's a lot of dynamics to cutting anything. I don't know what specifically in property taxes that you could cut. Now, go ahead.
With the market being the way it is, the job market being
Yes.
the way it is, just a thought off the top of my head. It would seem to me, if I were still in the workforce, that sooner than lose my job, I would collectively get together with my other fellow workers and say, hey, look, let's take a little bit of a cut here for a while. Let's see if we can help keep our jobs. We'll get paid a little bit less, but at least we'll have our jobs. And since you're saying it's over 70%, how much could that save us? That would be my first question. And the second question is, how much more are we going to start getting now out of these twin towers down here, now that they've been sold?
That's two questions. To the first question, will the employees cut their salary? First of all, the two of the largest groups of employees have to do with unions. And when unions are asked that question, Eddie, I'm going to tell you what happens. Should we take less or should we fire these other people? The answer is they fire the other people. They want to keep the money that they have.
Yeah.
Now, we're working on 4 years in the city of Holly Hill with no raises whatsoever. And are raises guaranteed, or do raises have to happen? No, they don't. But commonly in government, especially in the lower level jobs, you start at a lower pay than what you would have in the private sector. Unfortunately, there's no jobs in the private sector, so now the government jobs really stand out. A loyal employee, someone that stays there because they know they're going to have a pension or they're going to have a retirement, has a tendency to stay a lot of years. And if you're there for 20 years, well, you've gone through 20 contract negotiations, and more than likely there were raises involved, so you're making more money than you did when you first started there.
Right.
We do have a step pay plan in Holly Hill, which means that they automatically get a certain percentage each year. And unfortunately, we've had to take that away from some of the employees, or all the employees really, during that period of time. The second question about the Marina Grand, now called the MG on the Halifax, from day one it began paying property taxes. Whether anybody lives in it or not, it pays property taxes. Because if you don't pay the property taxes, the tax certificate goes on the auction block in
Right.
Volusia County, and somebody's going to pick it up. If they don't pay it for 2 years, well, guess what? You bought a piece of property very cheap for the taxes. That just simply doesn't happen. The banks that have held the property have been paying the taxes. The valuations, though, have dropped. It's dropped from $2 million to close to $800,000. So that money was going into the CRA, but it still is a big chunk of change for the CRA.
They're going to be putting a marina and some other improvements in down
Yes.
there. Will this will raise the tax level on those properties?
Not perhaps on the individual condominiums, but some of the other out properties, yes, it will. Now, I don't know if it's going to be shared with the individual condominiums. I don't know. But it's not going to be that much, because you can buy a condominium for practically half price of what they were originally. So if you're going to pay a little bit more in taxes, it's still a great bargain.
And I know I'm jumping around here a little bit, but there's
all right.
something else that comes up, the DROP program. Please explain that. What is the DROP program? How does it work? I know that it puts a lot more money into somebody's retirement fund. Explain how that works.
Well, DROP program is Deferred Retirement Option Plan. And what it's designed to do is, if you have a key employee that's in a key position, and they come up on a time, sometimes cities have a 20 or 25 or 30 year or an age that must, retire. There are, or you just, come to a 20 year and you're going to retire. There are DROP programs available where you can keep that valued employee on staff using their knowledge, using their ability. Because sometimes when these valued, experienced, older time employees leave you, you have to hire 2 employees and you end up paying just as much anyway, and you'd rather keep their experience. What the DROP program allows you to do is you drop, you can get your retirement program while you go back to work, generally at the same money that you were making before. Now, the school system has changed that, and they said, no, you're not going to get the money you were making before. You're going to go back to whatever the entry-level price is of that particular job, and if you want to stay, you can do that.
All right, so I put in my DROP papers. And I start drawing my retirement.
Right.
I stay on the job. And I continue to get paid, plus get my retirement.
Yes.
Sorry, I got a problem with that.
Well, there's two things going on here. Number one, the person earned their retirement.
Okay.
Number two, they're working and doing a job. They could go somewhere else and do the very same job and be paid. So that's another way to look at it. Retirement is an earned thing.
I understand that.
You've earned it through your association with the military, and it's well earned.
Yeah.
And they probably don't pay you enough, okay, as far as I'm concerned with veterans. But nonetheless, it was an earned compensation that you worked hard for in the military.
I agree with that.
If you put in 10, 20, 30 years, and generally it's in the 30-year range, well, then you've given the majority of your life to that particular business. You earn that retirement.
Right.
And now you're doing a job, it just happens to be for the same person, and you're being paid for it.
I think there's a lot of people out there would agree with me. That, you know, that it's kind of double dipping. Well, it is double dipping.
It's two things. They've earned a retirement,
I understand that.
and now they've earned a wage.
But back in the day when my daddy got retired, all he got was retirement, period.
Mm-hmm.
He couldn't go back to work.
Right.
And this bothers me.
Well, not many people
And I'm
actually...
sure I'm not very popular right now making that
Understand
statement.
it. Not many people actually use the drop program. You're going to find out that they're key valued employees. For instance, let's say in the police department, you have a 20 and out rule in Holly Hill. You get to the 20 years and this guy is like a really good detective, and he knows how to run the detective bureau, and he knows how to do a lot of different things. He could go into that drop program and still be a valued employee for 5 more years within the city, and receive his retirement that he earned over 20 years of law enforcement, and then be working again in that job, being the supervisor or doing whatever he does in the detective bureau, just as a for instance.
Well, this puts a very large burden on the salaries and citywide that you're talking about.
Well, any retirement, which is usually pension related, yes, it does, because you're going to end up paying people a specific amount of money. A retirement factor is, like teachers are at 1.6, which means they're going to get 48% of whatever their last 5 years average salary is. They're going to receive that as retirement pay. A lot of policemen and firemen now are at a 3.0. They're going to collect 90% of whatever they earned over the last 5 years. And that means for every one that retires, and you bring on a new one, you're paying for 2. So it's going to catch up to you, and that's why all cities throughout Florida and the nation are looking really hard at pensions and how we're paying out that money.
Is it any wonder why our cities are broke?
Well, is it any wonder why when the economy all of a sudden comes to a crash, all these things are exposed? I call it peeling back the onion.
Yeah.
Eventually you start to cry. That's part of it. I want to get back to this
Please.
property tax issue
Yeah.
that's here. Much has been made about the tax rate or the millage rate that a city charges. And there's some with low millage rates and there's some with higher millage rate. Holly Hill has the second highest millage rate. Now, a millage rate is the first calculation. It's calculated against what the valuations are. So if you have, ours is 6.55. I'm going to just average it out to 6. If you've got 6%